everyone. Shelley Penny here with Twisted Fish Artisan Jewelry. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you're having an amazing day. It is coming on to spring here, and I am so excited to see the end of winter and to be able to get out and dig in the dirt again. Anyway, I have spring on the mind these days, and so today I'm going to show you how to make a beautiful spring flower sun catcher with Jesse James Bead's bead mix in Parisian blue. I absolutely love this bead mix. It's really stunning, and it makes a beautiful blue flower. So the first time I posted one of my flower sun catchers, I was overwhelmed with requests for tutorials on this on the technique. It's a very simple beginner project that you can learn with just a few simple tools, and here's what it looks like. So the bead mix is from Jesse James Beads, and that little bead button, which is so darn cute, is from Dress It Up Buttons, which is Jesse James Beads' sister company, if you didn't know. So let's get started. You're going to need a few simple tools, and any beginner can learn this technique. I'm starting with the beads that I'm going to be using in the project. I'm going to be using Jesse James Beads Color Trends bead mix in Parisian blue. This is a beautiful mix. Look at this. Caged crystals, some large hole clay beads or ceramic beads, some metal. I love these beautiful faceted round beads. Whole lot of beady deliciousness showing up in this mix. The next thing I'm going to use is some wire. I'm using 12 gauge aluminum. I'm using 12 gauge because you can get quite a few beads on your flower, and it can be fairly heavy. Then we're going to use some 26 gauge silver wire to do the wire wrapping with. All right, so let's get started. I'm working right off the spool here. I've pulled out about a double wingspan, so from the tip of one hand to the tip of the other approximately. I don't know, it's probably about 6 feet of wire. Probably won't need that much, but it's nice to have if we do. So I'm going to start with about, let's say, about 8 inches down. And then I'm going to hold this with my pliers here, and I'm just going to bend this down. This is going to be one part of the stem when we're done. All right. So I'm going to start making the petals. So I just give that a nice little curve. Don't worry if it's perfect. Put a little bend here, and that's going to be one of the petals. All right. Now, in order to get that nice point at the end, once I've got the petal made, I just come in here with my pliers. Easier said than done. Give it a little pinch right here. And then give it a little stretch out. There we go. We've got a nice shaped. Now I'm going to take my bail making pliers. I'm going to just put it right in here and come around like that. So this actually is probably a little bit too far down. I'm trying to get them even here so they'll meet properly in the middle when we're ready to do that. All right. So I am going to do one more to show you on camera, and then I'm going to go off of camera to form the rest of the petals. All right, so I've got that basic shape. I'm going to pinch that end in there a little bit, and then I'm going to stretch it back out, and we have another petal. I usually do, for these large flowers, I usually do 10 petals. All right, so I'm going to continue doing that. and pick up when I've got the petals. Okay, so we've got to the end. I've made 10 petals here, and now I'm going to start to form the flower itself and create the stem. So when I get to the last petal here, I'm just going to bend that down like that, and that's going to be one side of the stem. And then I have the other side of the stem here. Don't worry about here if they're not lining up just yet. We'll work at that, but I might start to just form it a little bit. So here's what I do. I just sort of pinch them together a little bit. There's going to be some overlap until we actually do the wire wrapping, but just to get that basic shape with a fairly uniform center. All right, so I'm still working on the roll, as you can see. I'm going to cut my wire down here so that I have some room to work now that I know I'm not going to need any more wire. So here's how I'm going to form the stem. I'm going to hold this like this. I'm going to pinch this between my fingers, and I'm going to cross these over, and then I'm going to start to twist. Now the thing about twisting wire is that you have to be careful that you're not just wrapping one wire around the other, because that's the way it sort of wants to go, right? So I usually take them out separately like that, hold my thumb and finger right up close here, and then twist it, and that way I know that they're both twisting. All right, so we'll get down to where on the stem I want to make the leaf. All right, so we can make the first leaf here. Now I'm going to take this and fold it up like that, something real simple. Take my pliers, and I want the stem to come in behind so we can finish the wrap there. All right, it's just as easy as that. I might take my pliers and shape the point here a little bit, the same way we did the same way we did the petals. And then I'm going to continue the twist. If I want another leaf, I'll wait till I've got the long end of the stem on this side, and I'll do the same thing. I'll sort of bend it up like that. It's going to go in behind. So, and I'm a very good example that you don't have to be terribly coordinated in order to make something beautiful, because I'm not. Some mornings I am all thumbs, and that would be today. So there, we've got two nice leaves shaped. Now let me show you how I finish it off. So I don't want people to poke themselves with something sharp at the end, right? So I'm going to cut this one flush, and then this one I'm just going to wrap it around into a little circle so that's not poking out there at all. And then I'm going to cut this. All right. Just run your finger over it to make sure. This is aluminum wire. So the properties of aluminum are that it's very soft and they don't work harden. So no amount, I don't need to hammer this, because hammering aluminum is not going to make it any stiffer the way other wires do, like copper wire, right? So just to make sure, that's not too sharp anyway, but I can just sort of pinch down that end, and because it's aluminum, it will pinch down. That's perfect. There. So we've got the basic shape of our flower now. Come back into the screen here. So now I want to fiddle with this a little bit until I have the shape in the center, we want it to be round. So you sort of push it down. You're going to be pushing these petals together somewhat, sort of reducing the space in between the petals, just sort of molding it a little bit until you have it the shape that you want it. All right, so we're gonna, all right, once we get this all wrapped together, we're going to have a big space in the center that we're going to be able to put a bead of some description. All right, so before I do that, let's start to wire wrap a little bit. I'm going to take my 26 gauge wire, cut some off. I'm going to anchor it down here somewhere by wrapping it around 2 or 3 times. All right, so I'm going to hold that there. And when you're wire wrapping something like this, take your wire like that, and don't take this end if you can help it and put it through. You might do that. You might do that at the end of the piece, but for now, I have lots of room, so I'm going to poke it in that way. And this way, you're going to pull it straight out, and it's not going to get kinked. All right, that's my little tip for not getting your wire kinked. All right, so we're going to come up this way, and we're going to put a couple beads into this petal. The first thing I want to do is just finalize the shape of this petal before I put any bead in it. All right, so I'm just going to. You can see how soft that wire is too, right? So, all right. All right, I like the shape of that petal. So now I get to decide what kind of beads do I want to put. Now, you know, when I'm doing a piece like this, I really do it random. I just put my beads out, and then I decide as I go, as I'm making, what I want to do, what I want to put where. So I try and keep balance in mind. There's some pretty silver spacers in there too. Anyway, I try and keep balance in mind. So by that I mean I might have similar shapes and sizes on this side as I have on this side, or a similar bead, a similar color, something that'll bring this side and this side sort of together, so it looks like one cohesive piece. So let us start with this pretty bead. I just sort of put it in there. They're sort of going to be floating. All right. So what you're always thinking about when you put a bead into a frame like this is to get the wire to the other side and anchor that bead in the prettiest way possible. Something that draws interest. I like to form these little loops with my wire. So let me see if I can show you on camera how I do that. Let's turn it around. The other thing I wanted to mention is that if you come in underneath the wire, you've got to go out over top. All right, so I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to make a pretty little attractive loop here at the end. And like I said, you don't have to be particularly coordinated to do this. And then I'm going to turn it over and wrap this around. Now you notice I'm holding the loop that I just made because I don't want to pull it out. All right. Take your time when you're doing this so that you don't kink your wire. All right. And there I have my first bead placed. All right. Now, what else do I have here? I'm just going to randomly pick up beads and start filling in those petals. All right. Yeah. See, I didn't take my time there, and I almost have a kink. So I'm going to very carefully take that kink out and use my fingers, my fingernails, just sort of straighten that out as best as I can do it. All right. Let's take one of these little, oh, look at the glitter on that one. So beautiful. Take one of those, pop it up in there. Now, I'm going to show you a little trick here. You see I'm at the top. I have all this wire here that I need to get back down here so I can continue to the next one. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back here. I'm doing what I told you not to do, but I don't have enough space in here to get the wire through by putting it in the other way. So I'm going to put it in frontwards, but I'm going to be very careful. When I get down to this part, there's always the tendency for it A, to either want to kink, or B, to want to not wrap properly around the wire. So once I've got it to here, I'm just going to push that down and hold it in place while I pull the other ones through. All right, so I want to get down here to put another little something, either a curly Q or something. So how do I do that? Well, I'm going to go pass back through this bead. And I pass through the beads quite a lot. If I am not doing it for security or anything, I'm simply doing it because I want to get the wire back down here and still have it look nice and neat. So you'll notice I've got the wire wrapped around here. Why do I do that? I don't want it to kink. So it has to go down through here, and it's coming out this way. There's always a tendency to want to kink down there. So I tend to somehow hold that so it can get through that hole without kinking. You see what I mean? There we go. All right. So I'm back down through here. I'm just going to follow the path I've already made to get back down here. Now, I have a space here that I want to do something with, right? So you can do any kind of a pattern. I tend to like loops, but what if we did something different? What if we just made some sort of a pretty little design with the wire? So let's do this. I'm holding it where I want it to wrap around, and I'm going to take my wire through here. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do here. Okay, it's good and anchored there. Wrap it twice. Make sure it's good and snug. And then I'm going to just make another little So I'm going to make another loop right here. All right, now I'm going to hold, anchor the wire where I want it to, where I want it to wrap, and then I'm just going to make my way down to this point up here so I can cross into the next petal. Alright, so I've made my way down here. My wire is right here. So now the next thing I want to do is wire the bottom of that petal together. With a couple of wraps. There, and we're done the first petal. So I'm going to come wrap around here a couple of times, just so, like I said, to get from point A to point B in the neatest and prettiest way possible. All right. So now we're here. We can do the next petal. Now, as I'm going to just be mindful of what my finished piece is going to be like, right? Because in the end, these are all going to be wired together. So we're good. I think what I want to do with this one is just narrow it a little bit right there. All right. Okay. So I'm just going to wrap the wire around here once, just to give me a good anchoring point for my next bead. Sometimes I go underneath and back up through too, just to, again, just this particular one, I think I want it coming up this center like that. All right, so now what are we going to do here? We've got lots of choices here. I think I'm going to come up like this, and let's put, so we want something to go opposite here. What if we did this? Now, I haven't used one of these crystals in my flower. This is a nice big focal. It's not going to work with that loop, so I'm going to take that out. Let's try this. I think this will work quite nicely. Now, the tendency for these beads is to want to spin around like that. It's all right if you like that. If you want to minimize the spinning, I have this loop here, so I'm going to push that down a little bit so that the loop lays on the back side of that bead. And then at the top, I'm going to hold that, and I'm going to make another loop around like this to hold that. I can even make another loop just to be fancy up here. There we go. So now you can see that that bead is just sort of steadied, if you will, so that it doesn't spin. And I just take my thumbnails and just sort of make that loop at the back look a little bit neater. And then I'm going to anchor that. where it naturally wants to go is right here. So that's where it's going to go. I will anchor this right here. So again, I'm going to hold it with my thumb where I want it to wrap around the frame. And then I'm going to wrap around, poke that up underneath, and do it again. Okay. So up here, I could put one of those little beads. I think I'm going to put one of these beautiful blue ones right up here. And now sometimes I put 2 beads, sometimes I put 3. Totally your choice. Okay. All right, that petal is done. I like the way that looks, so I'm going to wrap around here, and again to get down here to begin the next flower. As neatly and as pretty as I can. All right. I'm again going to tie these together before I start. So the first thing I'm going to do is come in here and shape them. As you can see, I'm making decisions as I go. This is my design process. I just sort of design on the fly, look at what's coming up, how I want it to sit. I like that. I might even do another loop up here. Okay. So as you can see, I'm getting near the end of the wire here. So I'm going to just give that a couple of wraps around and cut it off and then get a new piece of wire. Sometimes I like to finish the wire up, you know, down here so I can start fresh, but it doesn't matter one way or the other as long as you get where you're going. Tucking the sharp bits in. I also go around afterwards and just make sure all of the sharp bits are in, but as I go, I don't want to poke myself while I'm designing, so I'm going to get another piece of wire. Now I'm just cutting off, you know, a couple feet, whatever you're most comfortable working with. Usually 2.5 feet is what I like to work with. I find that comfortable. Now, I have something that I want to do up here with one of these little drops. Let me show you. I'm going to take this and I'm going to wrap it around. These little drops here are top drilled. So what that means is that the hole goes through the top across here this way. And I think you can actually see there. You can actually see it there. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to suspend that. This is going to give us a little bit of sparkling movement in the piece. So we're just going to drop that right down, and I'm just going to let it sit right there. That is going to be real pretty. And then I'm going to continue my wrap. Always supporting the wire here, supporting the bead in the exact place I want it to stay, because when you're pulling on wire and wrapping, things can move. So I always am holding that right exactly. Now, I don't want to take away too much when it's It's hard to show you here, but when it's hanging in your window or standing upright, it's going to sort of hang flat like that. So the next piece I'm going to do here, I want to decide what I want to fill in this gap with that isn't going to take away too much from my from this beautiful drop. So I'm going to try I think I'll just put one of these little gray beads here. And before I do that though, you can see how that's going to go. I think I'm going to put just a little decorative loop here. Right underneath there, sort of like that. And then I'll put the bead on. Now I don't want it to go all the way up around like that. So we're just going to put it right here and then hold it in place while I wrap. And you can always move that little loop a little bit just to get it where you want it. One of the things about working with wire is that lots of times the wire shows the kinks. And with the aluminum wire is quite forgiving because, as I said, it doesn't work harden. You'll still see kinks. And in this project, it doesn't really matter if the petals don't have to be perfectly smooth. You're just sort of going for the overall effect. But when you're working with the smaller wires, especially a smaller frame, you have to be careful how you're holding it. So I've just sort of developed this technique where I hold it between the tips of my fingers like that. You'll always see me holding one way or the other. When I first started, I wasn't really sure how to hold it. I had a lot of wire kink marks and tool marks on my pieces. You just sort of learn the way that works best for you over time. All right, so I'm back down here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is move on to the next petal. It's coming along quite nicely, don't you think? Okay, I'm going to, once again, I'm going to wrap the bottom of this petal together. And then I want to come up by the center. I'm just going to give this a little bit more shape. I don't like how this is sticking out. It's sort of going to take up too much lateral space this way, which will affect the center and the end. So I want to get the petals sort of close together before I start wrapping, because if I start wrapping and then decide to manipulate the petals, it can sort of pinch up my wire in between. All right. All right. Let's put a crackle ball in here. Oh, I haven't used one of these yet. Look. Beautiful. I love that. So, how am I going to anchor to the side? Let's put a little decorative loop there. Support that wire. And wrap. All right. So I want to, there. See how I did that? Now, here's one of those times where I can't put the wire in backwards to wrap, so I'm just going to have to be very careful about the kink. I'll leave my finger in the loop so it pulls down, and then when it gets to be about here, I literally push that wire over the top with my thumb, telling it where I want it to go, and then back up. Alright, so I have the space down here that I need to fill. Here's another design element I sometimes will add. Work my way down here so that the wire is coming out just about opposite this one. I'll go one more wrap around here. So now you can see these two pieces here are almost even. So what if I did this? What if I took a loop, made a loop here, and then pass down through this bead here. Coming out the bottom, support that loop. Alright, get it where I want, and that looks pretty good right there. Alright, starting to take shape quite nicely. I'm going to use another one of these gray beads. Sorry, the blue ones. Oh, those blue beads are really pretty. The whole bead mix is really pretty, honestly. Blue, blue tends to be a favorite of a lot of people. I find that when I make blue anything, almost, it sells faster than variations of other colors. Typically, I can make twice as many blue things as other colors. With selling in mind, let's just say. Now, I haven't used one of these yet. I'm still trying to decide. I haven't really decided how I want to anchor it there. Let me just look. Let me just try something. Oh. What if, so I sort of pressed it flat. I'm going to show you the back side. So I've just pressed it like that for now. You know what? I think that's going to hold it just fine, actually. Just like that. I think that's going to do it. Because the finished piece is going to be sort of upright like that. So I think that's going to hold it in place just the way I want it. So I'm going to come around here. You can see I'm getting really low here with this little bit of wire. But I want to put something of interest right at the top here. So when I get to be here, and I don't really have enough wire to make a loop, I will just sort of use my pliers to sort of bring that around. Make sure I got the pointy bit tucked there. And then I'll just put a little purposeful kink in the wire just by grabbing it and turning it like that. And then I got to go back and make sure that this flower has enough wire so that it's going to face the direction I want it to face in. I still want to fill that space in, so I'm going to get another length of 26 gauge wire, a couple 3 feet worth, the length that I feel comfortable using. Just snip. And let's carry on. So we've got 5 leaves almost finished, so we're almost halfway finished our pretty little flower here, which is pretty cool. You can see how nicely it's coming together. So now, with the end design in mind, I can start to shape these a little bit better so we can see how it's going to come together. I think this is going to be very beautiful, of course. It's actually, see why I said at the very beginning not to worry about the center too much? As you work and start tying them together, it all sort of works its way out. It looks like I'm going to have quite a large center hole here, and that's all right. Sort of try and push it down together without ruining my inside frame wire wraps there. All right, coming together quite nicely, as you can see. I'm going to carry on. All right, now to finish it off, we need something for the center. So I'm going to get a little bit of wire here. Now, from my stash, I just happen to have this great big crystal that I'm going to use in the center. So, super easy. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to anchor the wire. I often decide the center at the end because I'm never quite sure how big the center is going to be when the flower is done. It just depends on how I've done shaping it. So sometimes I need a nice big center like I'm using today, and sometimes I don't. So I'm going to just anchor the wire like that. I'll tuck all these little bits afterwards, and we're going to thread my center on. And then I'll anchor it on the other side. All right, I'm going to go back down through the center just to reinforce that center bead and stabilize it a little bit. So I anchored it over here. As you can see, I'm just going to go down through the top of that bead. It's quite a large hole in that bead, so that makes life easy. Hold it here, pull it through the other side. Oh. There we go. And I'm going to take it back down here, tie it off here, and now I have a super fun little surprise to finish off this piece. So I'm just going to anchor this a couple of times, and then I'm going to show you. I just happen to have the cutest little bee buttons. Now these buttons, as you can see, have a little shank on the back. This is a button from Dress It Up Buttons, which is Jesse James Bead's sister company. So if you go to Dress It Up Buttons, look up Dress It Up Buttons online, or I'll put a link below the video, and you can get, they've got really cute little bees and butterflies, and they've got embellishments and flowers and Disney, licensed Disney characters. So here's what I did. I just put the wire on the back there. I'm going to decide where is the best place for that to nestle in. And I think probably just like that. will be how I want it to go. So I'm just going to use my wire to anchor that and go around the back and see if there's a way I can get back down through that shank the way I've got it there. And I think I can. Okay. So you can see I didn't use a lot of tools for this. Even during the making of it, I don't use my pliers very much. All right. So we are finished. Hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. If you do enjoy it, make sure you let Jessie James Beads know by commenting below.